He made his first million before turning 19. A teenager, born into comfort, trained in excellence, raised by a man who didn't speak much, but who never once let him fall. He was the kind of boy who made vision boards instead of excuses. The kind of boy who stayed up through the night chasing code, designs, and digital dreams, while the rest of the world scrolled past their own potential. And when the money came, it didn't come slow. It came hard. It came fast. It came in full. People noticed. Some whispered. Some applauded. But before anyone could call him a genius, before he could even celebrate his rise, a single phone call reached him. And on the other end was the one thing he never prepared for. Not a challenge. Not a setback. Something else entirely. And when he heard it, when the words left that woman's mouth, every goal, every win, every dollar disappeared from his mind. Because some truths don't shake you. They split you open. This is the story of a boy who thought he was chasing success until life introduced him to purpose. One morning in late spring, he sat across from his father, the weight of something unspoken resting between them. There were no arguments, no rebellion, just a question, a quiet, brave one. Can I go see where we're really from? His dad didn't blink, just nodded, and after a pause, he responded, not with a list of conditions, but one simple boundary. You'll live the way they do. No cards, no shortcuts, no hotels, just life, as it is. There was no lecture, no emotional speech, only understanding. His father wasn't sending him away. He was offering him a chance to become someone deeper. Plane ticket booked, bags packed light, no expectations, just questions that didn't fit into Google searches. As the aircraft lifted into the sky, the boy didn't know what he was chasing, but he knew something in him had been reaching for more than what he could hold. More than sleek devices, more than Ivy League dreams. Something older, something buried. And so, he went. Not as a tourist, not as a savior, not to fix, but to feel, to listen, to understand. 6 months. That was the plan. But destiny never cared for schedules. The heat met him before he stepped off the plane. Not just the air, but the pulse, the sound, the color, the density of a place alive in ways he couldn't have imagined. Lagos didn't wait for permission. It moved. Fast, loud, unapologetically raw. Horns, shouts, laughter, dust rising from restless feet. He wasn't dropped into paradise. He landed in reality. His uncle was a school teacher with stern eyes but soft hands. His aunt, a woman who ran a vegetable store like a queen ruling a kingdom. Their son, his cousin, barefoot, curious, already halfway through a YouTube video about passive income and game design. The house had 1 bathroom, 2 working fans, 3 people who knew their place in a world with no safety nets. And now, a 4th, who didn't. He rose before dawn, learning quickly that water wasn't a faucet but a chore. Plastic buckets, long walks, dust clinging to ankles. Breakfast wasn't cereal. It was hustle. Boiling yam, sorting tomatoes. Meals happened together, on the floor, with bare hands and soft prayers. At first, he flinched at the chaos. But then, he began to notice something. No one here was pretending. The laughter was loud, the problems real, and the days full. Nobody talked about identity. They just lived it. And so, slowly, he stopped resisting. He began asking questions instead of making assumptions. He learned to greet elders, to respect silence. He slept beside his cousin, fan whirring, dreaming different dreams than he did in New York. The first week, he was restless. The second, bored. But by the third, something shifted. His cousin was always watching something, tutorials, breakdowns, case studies, creators solving problems in dusty corners of the internet. One night, over the glow of a cracked phone screen, he watched two. Web3, design tools, community tokens, words that once felt distant, now made sense. He hadn't opened Photoshop in months, but suddenly, his fingers itched. His eyes sharpened. He remembered who he used to be. Back home, he'd led his church's media unit, built flyers, edited reels. He thought it was just a hobby. Now, it felt like a seed. He took what was left of his allowance, bought a SIM card, loaded data. No luxuries, just essentials. The Wi-Fi cut in and out. But he worked anyway. Late nights, 1 bar of signal, laptop on his knees, fan on the lowest setting. His aunt snored in the next room. And he built logos, slides, wireframes. Not for grades, not for likes, for survival. Slowly, the boy who had everything learned how to build something from nothing. His cousin tossed him a challenge. Design a logo for my class rep's project. They'll pay. He did. Fast, clean, thoughtful. They paid 10,000 Nigerian nairas. It wasn't much, but it felt like oxygen. Then came another request. Then 3 more. Referrals. Feedback. Late nights with no complaints. He built a rhythm. Set rates. Created invoices. Met deadlines. Took critique. He didn't chase perfection. He pursued value. And it worked. By month 2, he was coordinating projects for people in 3 different states. By month 3, his phone buzzed constantly. Clients didn't care where he came from. They cared that he delivered. Every transaction reminded him, your roots aren't what hold you down. They are what hold you up. He opened a local account, learned currency conversion, gave his aunt a new apron, bought his cousin a pair of used sneakers. He saw the notification, 1 million, in naira. He saw the zeros and something shifted in him. Then, in quiet, he scribbled a sentence on a page and folded it into his bag. Make $1 million legally, from here. Not from New York, not from a boardroom, from anywhere. Because value, he realized, is borderless. He grew up in a house that always had heat. In a neighborhood where driveways were wide, lawns were clipped, and no one ever knocked on your door unless something was wrong. There were no sirens at night, no shouting in the halls, just stillness. He had a room to himself, a bathroom to himself, and a closet full of sneakers that never touched dirt. If you saw him from the outside, you'd think, that kid must have everything. And in many ways, he did. His dad worked hard, quietly, without complaints. One of those black fathers who didn't speak unless it mattered. But when he did, you listened. He showed up to every conference, sat through every school play, paid for everything early. And yet, when the holidays came, when friends talk about going back home, visiting cousins, being around noise and food and arguments and hugs, this boy stayed behind. Every year, Thanksgiving was 2 chairs and 1 rotisserie chicken from the grocery store. Christmas, just him and his dad, watching reruns on a flat screen, smiling politely when neighbors dropped off cookies. He never said it out loud, but in his chest, there was a kind of silence that money couldn't fill, a kind of emptiness that even love, when spoken too little, couldn't answer. There were no photo albums, no stories from back home, just a framed picture of his mother, in black and white, sitting on a shelf that nobody touched. He was smart, polite, talented, but beneath the grades and the gadgets, there was a question that never left him. Where do I belong, when the only family I've ever known is a man who never talks about the past? He just sent out another project that morning, a full rebrand for a startup on the mainland. Clean layout, bold colors, A digital invoice already marked paid in full. His cousin gave him a high five. His aunt called him Baba Designer. The sun poured through the metal slats of the window like golden confirmation. He had made it. At least, that's what it looked like. The boy who once sat alone in a cold suburban kitchen now stood in a Lagos market, pulling airtime receipts from his pocket like a man who understood his value. His back was straight, his eyes clearer. And that morning, when he pressed call on his father's number, he wasn't calling for permission. He just wanted to share the joy. Maybe tell him about the new client in Kenya. Maybe laugh about the one that paid in crypto and vanished. Maybe just say, "I get it now." But the voice that answered wasn't his dad's. It was slow, older, soft, but shaken. "Hello." He pulled the phone back, checked the number, pressed it closer. "Who's this?" he asked. The voice replied, "It's Sister Joyce, from the church." His heart didn't race. Not yet. Not until her next words fell like bricks across his chest. "Your father collapsed this morning. He's in the ICU. Stroke. They're doing everything they can." The line didn't go dead, but something in him did. He didn't speak, couldn't form a sentence. He stayed at the concrete floor like it might give him answers. His hands, once used to sketching ideas and scrolling contracts, just dropped the phone. It landed on the bed, still lit, still buzzing faintly in his palm. And in that moment, the numbers didn't matter. Not the 7 figures in his account. Not the 32 open projects. Not the upward trend in every analytics dashboard he checked daily. Nothing. Not one success could reach him in that room. Because the only man who had ever stood beside him, the one who taught him how to tie a tie without ever saying "I'm proud of you," was somewhere between life and the edge of it. And all the distance between Lagos and New York felt like an ocean he hadn't planned to cross. The boy who thought he had figured it out couldn't move, couldn't cry, just sat there, staring, remembering every moment he didn't call, every text he left unanswered, every video sent from his dad with no emoji in response. It wasn't guilt. It was gravity. And that's when he knew. He had to go back. Not for business. Not to report a win. Not to tell the world what he'd built. But to sit beside the man who built him. The flight confirmation came through by nightfall. No calls to cousins. No explanation to clients. Just one focus. Home. He packed fast. Not the electronics. Not the notebooks. Just a hoodie, his passport, and the paper he once folded with the words, "Make $1 million legally, from here." The airport was chaos. But inside, he was still. No more dreams of domination. No fantasies about Forbes. Just one image, his father's hand, resting still in a hospital bed. When the plane landed, the cold greeted him like an old memory. Not cruel, just familiar. His house was no longer just a structure on a quiet street. It was the last place he'd seen his dad healthy. He didn't stop for food. Didn't change clothes. Just walked. Head down. Hoodie up. The hospital lights didn't blink. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and fear. Machines hummed in the background. And finally, he entered. There, beneath pale blankets and 4 wires, lay the man who raised him. And for the first time in his life, the son didn't reach for an explanation. He didn't search for the right phrase. He didn't perform. He just whispered, "Dad, I'm here." One tear escaped his father's eye. His hand trembled, just slightly. No words exchanged. Just a moment. And in that moment, a boy stepped into manhood. Not through a paycheck, but through presence. He didn't leave the hospital for 3 days. He sat in the same chair, slept with his arms folded across his chest, ate only when a nurse insisted, watched his father's chest rise and fall, each breath feeling like a small victory. And when he prayed, it wasn't loud. It wasn't scripted. It was just real. His phone lit up nonstop. Emails, DMs, clients asking for revisions, new inquiries piling in. A week ago, that would have thrilled him. Now, he couldn't bring himself to swipe open the screen, because nothing on it could offer what he was trying to hold on to. Somewhere between watching the heart monitor pulse and watching the sunrise out of a hospital window, a different kind of clarity arrived. He remembered the early mornings in Lagos, walking behind his aunt, carrying tomatoes while she bargained with strength he never noticed in women before. He remembered his cousin, explaining blockchain concepts like they were bedtime stories, speaking fast, thinking faster. He remembered laughing, really laughing, for the first time in years, barefoot on a cracked sidewalk, holding a bag of puff-puff like treasure. And he remembered the folded paper in his bag. Make $1 million legally, from here. He pulled it out, unfolded it slowly, stared at the words in his own handwriting. They didn't feel wrong, but they didn't feel like the end anymore. His goals hadn't failed him. They just weren't the full picture. Because he'd gone to Nigeria searching for a version of himself that wasn't shaped by wealth or whiteness or Western schools. And somewhere in the dust, the sweat, the silence of people who worked without applause, he'd found it. But purpose hadn't come wrapped in profit. It came in the quiet, in service, in realizing that every gift he carried was meant to build more than income. It was meant to build legacy. And legacy, he now knew, wasn't about who remembered your name. It was about who got to live better because you used it well. He came back to New York with more than stories. He returned with a question, a deeper one, the kind that doesn't trend, the kind that doesn't fit in a comment box. What do you do when your dream comes true, but someone you love can't celebrate it with you? What do you hold on to when money finally arrives, and it doesn't heal the emptiness? He thought he went to Nigeria to find opportunity, to prove he could build from scratch, to silence the doubt of growing up the only black kid on his block, to become the first in rooms his father could never enter. But somewhere between boiling water on a coal stove and chasing Wi-Fi on a rainy rooftop, he stopped chasing applause. He started choosing alignment. And now, sitting at the foot of his father's hospital bed, a journal open in his lap, sketches of a new project forming quietly in pencil. His thinking less about headlines and more about impact. Is asking the real question now. Am I becoming someone worthy of carrying my father's name? That name was never famous, but it carried weight. A weight built in silence, in sacrifice, in showing up. That's manhood. Not volume, not hustle, but meaning. Sometimes, growth isn't loud. Sometimes, it's sitting still long enough to hear what matters most. And sometimes, purpose doesn't arrive when you call it. It shows up when you're finally ready to receive it. Sometimes growth is pain, and purpose shows up uninvited. If this story reached a part of you you've been trying to ignore, you're not alone. Keep building. Keep listening. And when the time comes to answer your own call, don't let the noise fool you. Purpose is waiting, and it doesn't need an audience.